Okay, so I got to the boat last week for a beautiful sailing excursion, just to realize that when I started the engine, the oil pressure was at zero. So I figured, it must be the sensor. I looked inside the bay and it was full of oil. So I spent the day trying to figure out where the oil was coming from, and unfortunately, the oil pan had rusted through. So it's coming right from the middle, right underneath the oil pan. So how did I figure out that was actually leaking from the oil pan, since I can't see the bottom of the oil pan? It's too close to the bottom of the boat. Well, I put an oil pad underneath the oil pan, and then I just poured in a little bit of oil into the engine, fresh oil, and then just pulled the pad out after a few minutes and looked at where the spot is. And unfortunately, in this case, it was right in the middle of the pan, so there's no way it was something else. Some tools that you might need when doing this job are two 17mm wrenches, a 10 to 40 pound torque wrench, some extension bars for the torque wrench, a number of different sockets for various parts of the what you need to undo, a chain hoist so that you'll be able to lift the engine, and lastly, recommended would be something like fluid film to help with any rusted bolts, which you are going to run into. So that little mount there, basically those nuts are the ones I couldn't take off, but between this platform here there are a couple of adjustment nuts, just like the one I took off at the top. So when you adjust those nuts at the bottom, you can move the engine up and down, and all that's required to take the engine off is to take the top cap off, so that, and now the engine should slide up once I put a chain lift on it. Thankfully, so these are pretty easy, and I was able to use the torque wrench to take them off. That one there under the main water line, that one was a little trickier, but it moved after using fluid film and a 15/16 ratchet wrench. So that ratchet wrench, because it's relatively flat, it was able to get underneath that hose and unscrew that. The one at the front on the other side, that actually we were able to fit the torque wrench in here with the deep socket and unscrew it just through here. So the problem here is that pan there. So you can see it sits almost touching the bottom of the fiberglass. That's pretty crazy. There's not even enough space to put a finger in there. I can get to the bolts. The bolts are just there. That's not a problem. But taking that out, it's gonna require lifting that engine a fair bit, because even if I lift it so I can get out of the depression there, still can't get it out. I have to lift it all the way up to here, and then wiggle the pan out somehow. So that's going to be interesting. Here you can see that I had to move the alternator a little bit like towards the middle of the engine, so as much as possible towards the middle of the engine, so that I could pull the engine up. This is very easily done by just undoing that bolt there that you can see on the right sort of on the right hand side, and just pushing the alternator towards the engine. If you don't do this, then the alternator will likely get stuck on top of the hatch, and you won't be able to pull the engine out. On this particular engine, there are two lift points. One is right here where the extra coolant reservoir line goes through, and one is here at the front. So you basically just put two shackles, one here, one there, connect them together preferably, and lift with whatever strap that you've got connected between the two lift points. This off, there are 2 wrenches necessary, one to hold the nut and the other one to crank the bolt. So a few notes here. Where you need to undo the coupler is right where you see the 2 slightly different colored metals there, near the transmission, where the transmission ends. It's difficult to get in there, and it requires 2 wrenches, one pulling one way, the other one pulling the other way. They're both 17mm wrenches. Okay, so oil pan replacement. Can everybody see the light? Ooh, look at this. There is light coming through my oil pan. I mean, it's not that surprising. Look at that. So, how did we do this? Okay, so we have a strap around the front, the back and the front engine mounts. And then we have a line around the coolant reservoir, and that's attached to the main sheet. The chain is attached to a chain lift, which is attached to the main sheet through the boom, but not on the boom. So most of the pressure is actually on the mast. Undid all the nuts on top of the legs, not the ones attached to the floor, which was a learning experience. That's not what you're supposed to do. I tried doing that first. And over here we can see that the undone nuts on top of the mounting feet. We did not remove the legs on the front, which is probably not great because this coupler was a pain in the ass to remove. And then you can see the difference in height between the transmission and the coupler. It's pretty big. So I don't know how we're gonna have to lower this and probably remove the legs in order to actually fit those stupid little bolts in again. See these things? Yeah, those need to go in there. I don't know how that's gonna work, if at all. The only other thing that I had to remove, which I wasn't planning to, but it just made things a lot easier, is the main water line. So this line was also disattached because it just made things easier. Wasn't going to be pulling on anything. Other than that, really nothing was pulling. I mean, it kind of sucks that the alternator's kind of sitting on top of the spigot there. It's not the best, but seems to be liking it so far, so it's not going to be there too long. Probably the biggest pain in the butt is cleaning underneath there. So trying to clean the old gasket off, it's not great. I wouldn't recommend it as a Sunday activity. And here's my helper. The new pan is in. The hardest part, I think, of this entire thing was actually, it was really easy to get it out just from this side. It's not a problem at all. It comes right out. The new one went right in. Didn't even have to fight with it very much. I think the biggest problem is that the nuts here between the transmission and the oil pan, I would say, are nearly inaccessible. You can kind of see I haven't tightened them yet because I'm gonna do that one by one, but it's very difficult. I mean, taking them off is hard, putting them back on is just difficult. But that is probably the biggest problem. And of course, cleaning the old gasket off, that was fun too. I had to take pictures with the iPhone over and over until I got it all off. I used the chisel because it was stuck on pretty badly, just to get the top off, and then finished it off with sandpaper. It took a while, but now all I have to do is tighten these bolts and start doing things in reverse. Okay, so we managed to get the coupler back in place. I'm just recording a video. Managed to get the coupler back in place. Getting those bolts here, these ones here, aligned with the plate was a pain. Essentially what we had to do was take off the legs in order to be able to align them. So the legs here and the leg over on the other side. I know it's hard to see. Leg is right here. I'm touching the screw, the main bolt here. So that's it, this bolt, that bolt, and the same thing on the other side. And then put a strap around the transmission to be able to control the height. And then attach the back via lift point and side. And then just keep trying until you get it right, I guess. Seems to be okay. The bolts need to be tightened, the nuts need to be tightened. That's the only thing, but other than that, it does seem to be okay. One step forward, two steps back. So I tried to unscrew the oil pressure filter and I ended up snapping that instead. So time to go to part source.
Yes.
So this is the oil pressure switch on the Gemini 105NC or the Westerbeke 30B3 engine. I don't know when or how, but one of the leads here broke off while we were changing the oil pan. So we had to replace it, and I learned a few things. First of all, it's made out of 3 pieces. I don't have the third piece, but there's the switch. There's a 90-degree right angle 1.8 NTP connector, and then I don't have the third piece with me because it's on the engine now, but there's a little converter or adapter here. Now I thought it was a straight through and 1.8 NTP to 1.8 NTP, so I bought, so you can see I broke off the thread while trying to unscrew this from here. It was nearly impossible to do so. So or it is impossible to do so because I tried unscrewing it even after and I couldn't. So instead what happened is this thing snapped inside that piece there. So I bought all the pieces and I thought, okay, well, I can just reconnect it like this. I found out the hard way that the other piece, the output on it, the male part, is not NPT, it's BNPT. And that's actually just a tiny bit different, even though it's 1/8 of an inch either way. The British one is different. So this didn't work, but I was lucky enough to be able to take the remaining piece of thread out of the original adapter and reconnected everything, and it's sitting on the engine now. But it's a good illustration of how this thing looks. It lives! Oil pressure is good. Waiting for it to heat up. Alternator's good. Oh, looks like it's going up.